Welcome to episode 119 of Trek Live. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about what makes a Star Trek captain, I believe. But before we jump into it, Bill, how you doing this morning?
Doing well. Looking forward to talking about Star Trek captains. Yeah, excited to get into it. Have a whole lot to.
Yeah.
It's been a low key weekend, so not a whole lot of exciting things to share.
Yeah.
Other than this is the highlight of the weekend for me. Yeah.
Yeah, if we're talking about rewatches, I double down. So if you guys know, I usually stick to a 2 episode per week. So now I did 4 episodes per week. I'll just rattle a few of those off. Return to Tomorrow, Patterns of Force by Any Other Name, and the Omega Glory, and The Ultimate Computer. So a good chunk of episodes, a wide range of good to maybe middle of the road. I'm not sure why I watched 4. Maybe it was because I did do the Deep Space Nine. It kind of lit a fire under me to kind of get finished with TOS so I can get to Deep Space Nine. But I really enjoyed these kind of run of episodes. I think I didn't. None of them were like completely bad, but some were kind of middle of the road for me. But I noticed that there was a lot of bigger sci-fi concepts in this kind of run of episodes.
Yeah.
Which I always like, for better or for worse. So yeah, those are kind of the update on my rewatch. I'm kind of winding down on episode on season 2 of TOS, and I think Bill and I are going to discuss the next month. But I would like to do an episode on the comparisons between season 1 and season 2. I'm not sure if we've done that yet, but I think that would be kind of a fun little episode. So maybe stay tuned for that. I'll just give you guys a teaser. But Bill, does any of those episodes stand out to you? Anything you'd like to mention? I can run
I think it's a pretty good run.
Run them down again if you
Yeah, I think it's a good run for the most part. I'm not a huge fan of the Omega Glory. I like about the first half of that, 3/4 of that. I think it goes off the rails at the end with the Declaration of Independence, or the Constitution being read by Shatner. That's that's like an ultimate cornball moment.
Yeah.
But there's some cool stuff in the setup going over to the abandoned. I think it's the Exeter, where there's just uniforms everywhere, and the crew is like dissolved into the.
Yeah, there's some mystery there.
Yeah, there is, and there's some good stuff in the opening of that episode. I really like. I think what you said about some big sci-fi concepts is very apt. I think By Any Other Name and Return to Tomorrow specifically have like these omnipotent kinds of aliens who are kind of larger than life. The Kelvans and By Any Other Name, and Sargon and his cohorts, and Return to Tomorrow. I like both of those episodes a lot. I really like Return to Tomorrow. I love Leonard Nimoy's like villainous bad guy turn in Return to Tomorrow. He really like there are episodes throughout the show where he gets to play emotional.
You see his range.
He gets to you see his range over the course of the show, and episodes like The Side of Paradise and a little bit in The Naked Time and Is There a Truth No Beauty? Like in season 3, there are some where he gets to lose his inhibitions and even a mock time. But I think Return to Tomorrow, it might be the one time he really gets to play like a real bad guy, a guy who's menacing, and he gets to soak that up a good bit. I love him coming onto the bridge and sitting in the captain's chair and making it known that he's not beyond inflicting pain on the crew if they don't cooperate with him.
Yeah.
He's got some nice moments in that where he gets to do some different things.
I also love the score in Return of Tomorrow. I think there's a lot of swelling moments in that just make it a really good hour of TV. So
for sure, and that guy, the director of that episode, if you get into the like nitty gritty of the credits, his name's Ralph Sinensky, and he directed that one. He directed This Side of Paradise. He directed Metamorphosis. His episodes tend to be they tend to have that like swelling, emotional,
Yeah.
romantic quality to
Yeah.
them. If you look at his episode filmography in TOS, there is a definite
Yeah.
common thread that's there through most of them. So that might be another episode idea down the road. Look at Ralph Sinensky episodes from TOS. That's about as nitty gritty as you can get. But there is a definite pull to those I think he's got maybe 6 or 7 of them that range from first season to third season.
Yeah.
But Return to Tomorrow is a definite example of that. You also get Diana Muldaur, who played Pulaski in season 2 at TNG. It's the first of her 2 appearances. She's got another one coming up in season 3 where she's guest star in TOS. I think she's really good in Return to Tomorrow. Better than average, like female officer. There's a lot of that in TOS. A lot of female crewmen who pop up for an episode here or there and may or may not have some sort of romantic interest with Kirk or with somebody, serve the episode. I think she's one of the better examples of that.
Yeah.
Kind of character. So yeah, I'm glad you liked that whole run of episodes. I think The Ultimate Computer is another really good one. I like that a lot. Another big sci-fi concept, good guest star. I think it's a good stretch of episodes.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you watched a bunch because I didn't watch any. So you balanced me out.
Yeah.
I'm still paused. I'm at a really good point. I don't know what's taken me so long, but my next 3 episodes are Yesterday's Enterprise, The Offspring, and Sins of the Father. So I have
talk
good,
about a
good
run.
stuff waiting for me. Yeah. I'm in the thick and thin of the best of season 3 of TNG waiting for me. So as soon as I hit play on that Blu-ray, I'm into good stuff. But I have not yet taken that leap. Maybe today, maybe this afternoon, I'll get into it.
It's a good idea. Hey Rob, welcome to the chat. It looks like he's saying that I'm gonna overtake him on his rewatch. You know what? I think Rob, this is just a perfect time to just join me in our quest through TOS. So that kind of rhymed. All right, let's move into the topic at hand.
Let's do it. Star Trek Captains.
Yes. I'm not sure. We may have done a similar.
We've definitely done quite a few episodes talking about the captains in various ways, spotlighting specific captains, role reversals, like putting different captains in different situations. We've done all kinds of things, but I don't think we've done this exact thing where we're kind of looking at the makeup of the captains, like what makes them good, what makes them successful, what are the common things that like link them all together, what do they have in common that like makes them, characters who can do that job, or successful characters in that sort of role. So we're gonna get into that. We're gonna see where the conversation takes us. We don't have a whole lot of hard and fast rules.
Nope.
Like none to like talking points that we have to hit on. This is gonna be a fluid conversation, like ours always are, for the most part. And we're just gonna see where it takes us.
Yeah.
So like you were the one who kind of hatched this. It was just in our like offline conversations about what we're gonna talk about.
Yeah.
This was your baby. So like what are you eager to talk about? Like what comes to mind for you?
I think where this kind of topic kind of stemmed from was the realization of the hardships that a captain has to go through, and I think it's really also stemming from this microscope of a series that we're going through in Picard. Is that I'm realizing that these men and women have gone through some really tough stuff, and I think that in Star Trek we've seen obviously bad captains and bad have the hardships affect them, but these just handful of crewmen, I'm not sure, and maybe we can get into it of what really makes them so, but I mean just in TOS the stuff that Kirk goes through, I mean family members, the fate of the galaxy, I mean it's just a lot of things. Have his in the Ultimate Computer, have his just his position doubted. You know, do we even need a Star Trek captain? You know, that's a lot. And then kind of moving on from TOS, just think about Picard, or not, TNG, moving on to TNG, what Picard went through, all the hardships and everything that he went through, and still have to be the face of the crew and then lead and keep moving on. Yeah. We could keep going on. Go to Deep Space Nine. Look what happened to Sisko. I mean, he wasn't a captain when we first meet him, but with Wolf 359 and all that, and then going to Voyager. All right, we got this typical. She doesn't have as much, and then she gets thrown into the other side of the galaxy, right? And then, just continue. You could continue on, but I think one thing that I see common in a Star Trek captain is their toughness and their ability in the face of adversity to be able to have the weight of everything on their shoulders, which is amazing and also inspiring, I guess, as well. But I know that was a long-winded thing. We could go a lot of it, but I just feel like I had to get that out.
Yeah, I think kind of the brief, real quick look at each captain, and I think that kind of helps to set the stage for what we're kind of looking to talk about here. And I like the way, obviously Sisko, like you said, we don't meet him when he is a captain yet. Like with the very beginning of Emissary, is obviously even a flashback even further back.
Yeah,
he's on the Saratoga. He's at Wolf 359.
Yeah,
he loses his wife. I think that experience, getting to watch him as a commander through the beginning seasons of Deep Space Nine, and even before, like through the beginning of Emissary, the flashback to Wolf 359. I think that sort of illustrates that these characters, these people, like, I think it's easy to go into these shows and think about these characters, the captains, as they've arrived. Like they are the captains. That's where they've always been. But
no,
Deep Space Nine and Sisko sort of illustrate they had to go through a lot to get there. And like Sisko, there are things in their background. Picard in TNG has similar things, like looking at, although he's still a captain when I'm thinking about like his experience on the Stargazer. But
yeah.
These characters have had a whole lifetime of experiences of dealing with, crisis situations, being in battle, being in diplomatic, incidents, and there's a lot of pressure, even not being the captain. And the people, you get the impression, I get the people who learn to thrive in those situations are the ones who become captains. Like the people, I'm sure there are people who those kinds of situations kind of chew up and spit out, and they might not ever rise to that level. It takes a certain mentality, a certain, like you said, toughness to sort of embrace the suck, for lack of a better term. Embrace the difficult nature of being on an island in deep space, dealing with difficult situations, and learning from their own captains and getting ready to be out there and doing those things.
Yeah.
I think seeing Sisko deal with, obviously an extreme version of that, losing his wife in the battle with Wolf 359, that's certainly like the 10 out of 10 far extreme of, wow, this guy had to deal with a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of characters wouldn't get to where Sisko got after that. So that speaks to Sisko's toughness, and that he was able to push through and get through the bad times to not only get to be a captain, but to use those experiences as make him a part of who he is, and help him succeed as a captain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another thing is I think it's also I see a lot of work in progress type characters, like they're with Picard, in TNG era, he's kind of working on that more casual side. Like he's obviously dating. He's also like the poker table. This I wish I had come to this sooner. So I think he's working through that, and I think, I mean, all of them definitely are work in progress. So they haven't arrived, like you said.
Well, I think something that you could definitely. The thing that comes to mind the most for me is like a common trait, something that all of these characters deal with. It's balancing that being a leader, being separate from the crew, and embracing the obvious need for this crew, whatever ship they're on, to be a family and to be there for each other and to be the head of that family. Like there's a weird dynamic that only the captain has to deal with. They're at the top of the food chain. They have to maintain a certain level of distance, and I do think, like you said, Picard obviously deals with how to approach a comfort level with that dynamic all through TNG. Janeway, especially early in Voyager, I think struggles with that. And has to have a different dynamic because of their unique circumstances. But I think all of the characters have that challenge. They have to be their real relationship is to their ship. Kirk even talks about that. Like his real girlfriend is the Enterprise, and that keeps him from committing and keeps him from putting down roots anywhere with anyone really. He has Kirk, he has Spock and McCoy for sure. He has people. But, it's difficult for him to commit in any kind of romantic way with anybody because of his commitment to the ship and that what that calls for. So they all have these kinds of struggles with balancing duty, and many of them don't have. Sisko is sort of the anomaly here, but you get the sense that a lot of them are kind of distant with their family. They don't necessarily keep close ties. Sisko has a son and had a wife before he was captain. So he has the Deep Space Nine certainly focuses on like Sisko's family dynamics more. His dad, who he stays in touch with and maintains contact with. But you definitely get the sense. You had mentioned, and I think one of the things that prompted this conversation is I think Operation Annihilate. Kirk, you find out Kirk has a brother on some far off planet who ends up dying, and Kirk has to deal with that in that episode. Because of the nature of TOS in the 60s and not much serialization, it's not something that carries through and doesn't get referenced much. But that's a story beat they play on in that episode. But you don't get the impression that Kirk spends a lot of time. You don't get the impression in that episode that Kirk stays in like constant touch with them. The Enterprise is an all-consuming job, and it keeps these captains are kept from their families, and it keeps them from being close with families that they have, and it keeps them from building families if they don't have them. In many cases. So, Sisko is certainly an anomaly there. He has some differences from the others, but that's another common for at least some of them to tend to deal with.
And maybe something that I've kind of noticed as well is that I think trauma or adversity in earlier life prepares them for later, because they're not as jarred. They're kind of used to that this has happened before, so they can be they know how to push through, and which kind of can just trickle down through the crew. And I think that's something that I don't know if you want to look for troubled Starfleet officers to become officers, or troubled Starfleet, but it's
I know what you mean. But I think Star Trek definitely over the course of, especially in TOS and Star Trek Beyond, even you get a look at a captain who, you get the sense that losing people and the trauma of their life,
can take
pre-captain, during captain, takes a toll, and it pushes them to the breaking. One of the episodes you just watched, the Omega Glory, is a Star Trek Starfleet captain who, kind of goes off the rails and makes some bad choices, and Kirk has to deal with that. And I think that goes to show that's a point definitely in throughout TOS that this is a tough job, and these captains don't always have what it takes, and the trauma sometimes takes too much of a toll. And maybe what sets Kirk apart, maybe what makes Kirk successful is that he has Spock and he has McCoy. He has this like moral center that keeps him. Maybe Captain Tracy from the Omega Glory didn't have that,
that's.
I think the dealing with those kinds of things is a challenge that all these characters definitely share.
But you also make a great point too, that what makes a Starfleet or Star Trek captain is a great crew as well, right?
Well, definitely, and I think they all that balance that they have to struggle with, the being the head of the family and having, being able to have relationships with people that are meaningful and are helpful to them while still being at the top of the food chain and being at the top of the pyramid and having that professional command over the crew. Like these characters all have that They struggle with it for sure, but for the most part, they're successful because they know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
It's an evolving process for many of them. Picard, notably with finally going to the poker game at the end of TNG, but they all of these characters know how to lean on their people, know how to lean on their crew. They Kirk has Spock and McCoy. Picard has Riker and Troy and Data to talk to and to confide in their own in each their own way. I think they all Cisco has Dax, Janeway has Tuvok and Chakotay. Like they all these characters have that like leveling off, centering relationship that I think keeps them on course. So I think that's, to me, that might be like the quintessential thing that all of these characters have that is the most common, between the 5 and 6 of them, however many there are.
Yeah.
Discovery.
That's one aspect that makes Star Trek Captain, is that they are not reliant on their crew, but the utilization of the crew, and not just as crew members, but as as a relationship. So.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the other thing too. I kind of going just as an extension of like leaning on them for getting through personal trials, dealing with the loss of crewmen and difficult situations. As some examples, but the other thing that is really common to these characters is they all present these scenes where they're like either sitting around a table or standing around a table, talking through a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Each of these captains, I feel like, know their limits. They know what they don't know, and they have crew, they have senior officers who have expertise and they know things that Kirk isn't a science officer, so he knows when to defer to Spock.
Yeah,
he knows when to defer to McCoy and when to defer to Scotty. And I think all the captains have that. And those conference room scenes where they can sit around a table and let each person who has their level of expertise speak, and it's the captain's job to like pull together all the information and weigh it all and make the decision, as opposed to just sitting in a room by themselves and studying information and just making siloed decisions without anybody influencing. I think that's another common thing that kind of goes hand in hand with the relationship with the crew and knowing how to conduct the crew.
Yeah, that's it's not about all, it's not about a me. It's really a team aspect and a facilitator almost, what makes a Star Trek captain. So yeah, totally agree. What else? If you were to let's say you're a writer and you're creating a captain for a future series, what would go into it, and how would you differ? That's a big question, I guess. Maybe
that's a big question.
Maybe save it for another time, but
maybe
because I think why I bring this up is because they're all there's definitely similarities that we've seen and we just talked about, but there's also some differences, and I think the difference is kind of to lend itself to the premise of the show. So I think that what makes a future Star Trek captain, I would also say that it would be the premise of the show, but also being able to tap into the similarities that we've already seen, right? Because if you think about it, if they go to Starfleet Academy, they learn from these people. They learn to be like these people, but also bring a little bit of a different take, and that can be command style, other things. But I just think that they definitely need that balance.
I definitely think premise of the show. I think the captains are reflections on the desired tone of the series. I think they kind of go hand in hand. The head of the show up until Discovery. Discovery is a little bit different, but the captain of the ship tends to sort of set the tone for the style of series it is. The kind of the overall sort of. There's an umbrella over the whole operation that is kind of set by the captain, and you often hear the different cast members from the different shows talk about sort of on the production side of things that the sets literally kind of took on the personality of the actor who played the captain. very often. So that I think goes to show that that's typical of any kind of anything. The leader sort of sets the tone.
Yeah.
In anything, but I do think it's important for the captain to if you're talking about like creating a Star Trek show or how Star Trek works as a TV show, the captain should be uniquely built to reflect the idea of the series and to be uniquely suited to drive forward what you're trying to get at. What's the thesis of the show? You know, I think Voyager needed Janeway. I think that's you know, she's the mother of the crew.
As Rob's putting it.
And her struggle to embrace that. You know, she's female, so it's easy to use the term mother, but like to have, because they're so far flung and on their own. I think that struggle that we talked about at the beginning, balancing head of the family, professional leadership kind of role, you know, all the captains certainly deal with that, but Janeway's in a position where she has the most real, tangible struggle with that because they don't have Starfleet to lean on. So she really is like the real top of the food chain for all intents and purposes, but she's also having to you know, nurse this crew through this difficult time, this difficult situation. So for that show to work, for that premise to work, they needed a character who could operate in that dilemma. And I think Janeway is built to do that. So yeah, to answer your question, I guess to build the Star Trek, first you need a concept for the show. Like you need to know what kind of series you want. You know, what's the thesis of the show, and from there, I think your kind of captain will kind of naturally, you'll get ideas for what kinds of differences you want from the captains that have come before, and how you want to emphasize those common traits too.
Yeah.
Picard gets to be, like Rob says, Picard gets to be more stern and has a different struggle with those same dynamics because he's the head of the flagship. He's got Starfleet to lean on all the time, and it's the flagship. So even the crew is more best of the best than maybe even Voyager is.
Yeah.
So each captain, like you said, has differences for sure. They all have different wrinkles to these unique challenges that kind of link them all together. And Sisko has his own thing. He's out. He's similarly to Janeway. He's kind of on an island. It's not as far away as Janeway, and he's not like coming home slowly but surely, trying to. But he's in a position where he's dealing with every single day. He wakes up and has the same struggle with the Bajorans, managing that, you know, bringing them along and helping to facilitate their recovery from the occupation, and having the Cardassians knocking on the door right there, you know, kind of ominously threatening the whole thing, dealing with the wormhole and all that. Like, he, unlike these, wakes up every day and has the same sorts of struggles every day. Unlike Picard, he wakes up every day. It depends on what, you know, where are we? Where are we in space? Where are we heading? So Sisko has unique challenges, but I think he has the same challenges at the same time. He has those same struggles with how to, you know, deal with his crew, who to lean on. They all share a commitment to, you know, Starfleet principles, Federation principles. I think that's another thing. Like this, I think to become a captain in Starfleet, you need to really buy in. You need to really believe in these principles. So being able to be the face of the Federation in you know, diplomatic situations, dealing with Bajorans every day, dealing with Cardassians every day, Sisko has to be the face of the Federation every day. So being able to speak on behalf of those principles and that organization is another sort of common
which I think, I feel like you have to be rooted in those beliefs and in that system, because they're going to be tested. Especially, I think, just coming back to a little bit of Janeway's, she has to be really rooted in her beliefs that this system's going to work, because it's going to be tested without backup. So I think again, that's what makes a Starfleet captain or Star Trek captain, is that they got to be pretty rooted in their in the beliefs and the inner workings of Starfleet, because they're going to be tested in different ways, like you said, with Sisko, and then with maybe Picard. He doesn't really have the same challenges, but he gets challenged in different ways every day. So I think, again, you got to be pretty rooted.
And I think knowing when to, I think they all struggle with, the idea of Archer's a little bit different too. Like that, he's kind of separate because he's operating at a time when, if we're talking about like Federation principles, there is no Federation.
There is
yet.
nothing.
Starfleet's
So Wild Wild West.
He's kind of he's taking the lumps that are helping to guide these other captains. So he's kind of removed from the situation a little bit, but a lot of these other captains are constantly put into positions where they have to balance that commitment to the principles, the prime directive. What does the rule book say we should do? What do we have to do? What are the do's and don'ts? And finding ways to operate within the rule book, and maybe even knowing when to skirt the rule book a little bit in different situations. I think all of the captains have little situations, little examples of times where they either, if not had to break the regulations, the prime directive, but may have had to bend it. And I think that's another common struggle that these captains are constantly dealing with. When to do it, when not to, and how to make it as palatable as possible for not only the organization but for themselves and the crew, to make choices like that. So Rob says that what makes a Star Trek captain could be a quite objective question, as we all probably look for different things in a captain that we would want to serve under, or a leader that you'd want to serve under, or a manager that you'd want to serve under. I think this could easily branch into more practical, real-life conversations, too. For me, he says, for him, he would want somebody that is approachable, supportive, motivational, kind, understanding, leads by example, all those things. And I think, depending on, like Rob said, it's very objective. It's very subjective. It's very subjective. I think each of us, I think a lot of these different captains have qualities. I think they all share those qualities to certain degrees, and it comes down to personal, preference for who you'd want to, which one you might want to serve under in an imagined world where you can be in Starfleet, or which character would most resemble a real life manager that you'd want to work under, that kind of thing. That is a very subjective proposition, I think. But I think that what we're talking about here is subjective. I think each person brings their own stuff to watching Star Trek, their own, that's the fun of talking about it, I think, is everybody has their own perspective and has their own life experiences that they bring to it. So, I think different people are going to have different takes on conversations like this.
Anything else?
Do you have a character? Do you have a captain that, like Rob's saying, like who would you, like, who most resembles the kind of leader that you would want to?
Man, that's a tough one. I'd probably have to say probably Kirk or Janeway, just because I feel like those two are the people I'd want to emulate. Like you said, it definitely starts at the top, so I look to the person at the top to emulate. So I feel like Kirk, he's my favorite captain, but I think just because he does the good balance of logic and emotion or gut instinct, which again is kind of the premise of the show, right? You got the big three. We kind of talked about it before. So I like that. That's really what I would want to try to emulate, if I was in Starfleet. But also the family aspect of Janeway, I think, is very attractive in a commanding officer as well. just because she's I don't know, awesome. But
yeah, she is.
whatever.
But she does. I think she, because of her unique set of circumstances, I do think she strikes the best balance between that motherly, fatherly, if male or female, kind of role, while still clearly being the leader. Nobody questions that she is in command.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very funny, Rob.
Yeah. Very
yes,
funny.
he does.
What about you? Is there a?
I have a hard time. I mean, they all have traits that I try to kind of incorporate into my daily life. I think, particularly as a professional. Like you said, Janeway's ability to I think Janeway strikes the best balance, the most comfortable balance over the length of that show, being the head of a family that can be leaned on for all kinds of things, but also, being the leader, in the professional sense. Picard's dignity and level of expertise and professionalism, I think, is clearly a thing. Kirk's willingness to kind of get his hands dirty, I think, be the go-getter. I think of that with him. No job is too low for him. They all. I mean, the easy answer is things. Little unique windows into these common struggles that I kind of latch onto. I always say, I'm on the record clearly saying Picard's my favorite character.
Yeah.
So, he's probably most on the mind all the time. But I guess sort of the thesis of this conversation is probably that there are common challenges, common traits that build these captains up, but they each have their own unique avenues to conquering them and dealing with them. And I try to take from each one, their unique set of strengths and assets.
Yeah, that's to be a good person, to be a good human being, to be a good. So I think not just the captains, but characters too. We pull a lot of these things and see a lot of these things and try to emulate a lot of these things that we've seen in Star Trek to make what makes a good human being, right? So as we the audience watch and we pull things from that so we can be, and I think we should all to aspire to be and to do that. So that's just kind of a bigger soapbox moment a little bit, if that made any sense at all.
Just real quick to throw one other thing that just popped into my head. Absolutely all true. But Archer we didn't really mention him much. He is a unique animal because of his pre-Federation status, I guess. But I think the thing that probably most defines him to me, that I think all of these captains share to some level of degree, is the enthusiasm for the mission. Like this is what I have to do. This is the one thing I need to be doing. I think Archer may be the most purely, wow, space exploration is awesome.
Yeah.
This is the one thing in life I'm meant to do. I think all of the captains have elements of that. Sisko maybe least so. Sisko is the one of them that I think under a different set of circumstances could be comfortable doing something else.
Yeah.
And some of that is he has a family, he has a son. So I think that lends itself to he could be pulled in different directions. But even I think he comes into his own to that show and finds himself in a position where he's doing the one thing he knows he has to do, the one thing he can do. But I think that's an important trait, and I think that enthusiasm, that commitment, that buy-in to what we're doing here rubs off on the crew, and I think that's an important trait for leaders of any kind, but specifically something like this. I think if the crew senses a lack of enthusiasm or a lack of commitment, I think that has that's going to have a negative impact on the whole. And I think Archer is the most obvious example of a Star Trek whose commitment and buy-in to the mission is the most apparent.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we should just kind of wrap this up here. I think
Sure.
I think we had a great conversation with about Star Trek captains. Again, I would encourage everyone to be a Star Trek captain in their own lives, and
Of course.
and kind of strive to be like them, because they are a good source of inspiration, like we kind of talked about. But any Star Trek content that you'd like to mention?
You first.
Okay. Yeah, I'll mention. I'll do the cop out. The easy answer. I think maybe we'll both do the cop out. Trek Ranks did a really fun, kind of cool topic. WTF moments. It was a really fun listen. So definitely go check that out, because it was a good time.
Definitely, yeah. Trek Ranks for sure is standard answer. Right now it's similar to time during Discovery I do when I listen to Star Trek podcasts. They tend to be, different reactions to Picard, to the Trek Geeks, conversations about Picard, their live conversation that they have. There's a Trek FM, The Line. If I'm going to listen to Star Trek content, it tends to be reactions to Picard. So I'll kind of lump all of those shows sort of together. And, I listen to different ones, different weeks. I don't necessarily listen to them all every single week. Some more so than others, but there's lots of good Star Trek Picard content out there if you're looking for fair-minded and not mudslinging reactions to the show. They're podcasts and on YouTube as well. So.
Yep. Rob mentions a primitive culture episode that was really good. It's a tough listen. It was about sexual assault in Star Trek, but it was really interesting. Yeah, I did see that. It's definitely going to be, sounds like a tough listen, but...
pretty heavy.
Yeah. All right. I think I'm going to wrap it up a little bit early. Right around that 45-minute mark. It's okay. You guys know the drill. The discussion does not have to stop here. Facebook, Twitter, Discord. Twitter and Discord probably being the best way to keep the conversation going. We will be back next week to talk about the next episode of Picard and another topic of the week for Trek Live. So, yeah.
Yep. Thanks everybody. Thanks Rob for hanging in the chat and
Yep. Thanks Rob.
contributing. Thanks man.